Hola Wizzy Wizards, and welcome back. Oh, it's my suitcase to the pursuit of happiness with me, Pigtail Girl, your friend and fellow weirdo on this wonderful magical path of life. As you can see, I am quite happy on my pursuit of happiness. I've been doing a lot of personal wizarding at home, so I've been kind of a bit preoccupied, asking daily, what can I do today, to help the greater good, as in the world, and been doing some wizarding, personal wizarding missions on that. So I'm not going to say any more on that, but I just hope that I see the benefits of the work I've been doing, and work that, if you've been joining our groups, the OWOL groups, you've been learning the reality shift manifestation methods. You can take those methods and you can apply them, and you can come up with your own manifestations based on those same protocols that we used. And so I also wanted to talk today about the Anunnaki again, because it's all right and good to talk about my opinions, but I wanted to go into a little bit about how I came to my opinions and beliefs that I have in relation to those events that I've spoken about, with the Anunnaki being Elohim, being deceptive energies. How do I know that? Why do I come to that conclusion? How can we see that, and learn that for ourselves? So if you look at humanity, right, the first writing appeared about 4,200 years BC, I believe, in ancient Sumeria, in the form of clay tablets. And this writing suddenly appeared at the same time. There seemed to be an extraterrestrial group that had also suddenly appeared. And now, if we go back even further than that, humans had oral traditions. So before we had the written word, we had oral traditions, which is why things weren't written down. And we had pictographs, and we had stone circles, and we had other things. And this is why I think the dawning of writing is very significant. And we need to look at what that looks like, the dawning of writing. What did writing look like in the old days, right? So anyway, I'm going to come back to that. But before that, we had these stories coming from many tribal people, and also the Vedic stories that were all oral before they were written down into their holy scriptures, holy books that they have in India, that they base Hinduism off. And it talked about a battle, like some sort of battle that was going on between the gods. We can just take the word gods to mean sky people. And there was destruction. And is there remnants of destruction on this planet, or things that look like there could have been weapons used? Desertification. That was a bit, spit it out, pigtails. Where we have masses of deserts suddenly. Were they always deserts? Were they always like that? Are those signs of weapons that we heard about in biblical texts that's also linked to a group called the Elohim, right? If you listen to the work of Mauro Biglino, who's giving us the real translations, he says that the Old Testament is basically a book talking about, I think he's coming to the conclusion now that it's extraterrestrials, if not more advanced human beings, because he's a man of science. He doesn't jump to conclusions, unlike Pigtail Girl over here. Now, actually, I do try not to jump to too many conclusions. I say that as a joke. I actually have a lot of methodology to come to my conclusions. And I'm not saying that other people don't also have a lot of methodology. I'm sure they do. But I try to have right and left brain working when I'm, you've got to front load with the information to then understand what information you need to be looking at and what's significant with the intuitive brain, and try and figure it all out. So that being said, so we have this in the past, some sort of war between different groups, so different ET groups, because it was a war between gods. We don't know they were the same group. They were probably a different group. And then we've got Starfire Tor's testimony as well in the Time Chronicles, which you can go and listen to on the Time Chronicles here on YouTube. I'm not going to go too much into that right now, but we have some testimony as well about the ancient battles that went on Earth. So just going in local stories, it seems that there were some good ETs or star ancestors or gods or beings that helped mankind. And these seem to be linked to traditions where they didn't really have writing and that they lived very much with nature. And these ancestors just sort of taught them things like how to survive. They were more like guides, teachers, and friends. They weren't worshipped. They were more like, like a teacher or a mentor. And then we have the other stories of like these reptilians and the dragons birthing royal lineages, kingship, emperors. And this is all the beginning of the new inverted reality, the fallen matrix that we call it on this channel. And that started around that Abrahamic historical period where this group suddenly appears, Anunnaki. And that was, I believe, at the beginning where they started to infiltrate after the war. And it never ended the war. It just went into a stalemate because there was so much destruction between sides. And the good guys didn't want to destroy the planet. So it all sort of they all went a bit underground. But at first, the ETs infiltrated us. They ruled over us for a bit, gave us writing, because they need to give us their tools that they're going to use to control our minds here. In the inverted matrix, it's all about enslavement and the controlling of thoughts through deception and illusions, propaganda. Now, how do I know that? So this is the thing. How do I know that? Look at it today. Right? If you can understand that everything that's a seed planted in the past, the fruits it bears, and we know we're under the fruits because that's our modern history is all linked to the Abrahamic text and goes back to about the Vedic text, and there's a little bit in there from Egypt, but most of it's on this Jewish timeline of the Old Testament into Christianity, then into the Muslim faith. We can see there's this Abrahamic story that involves these archangels and these group called the Elohim that gets mistranslated as God, but it's always it's plural. And in the more ancient texts that you can also look into around that time, the Elohim were plural. They weren't one. The one God started to be manifest through Yahweh and through the Abrahamic text. He wanted to choose his people that was going to be his group, and he would be the one God, and then that came out supreme. And the other Canaanite religions, and there's other religions all about that time in different languages, and they talk about multiple, like Baal worship. If you really go back and look at it, you can see that the Elohim were many, and they had children and wives and all of this stuff, and Yahweh had a wife, and then gradually that all got edited out, and this is why they gave us the written word. Now, if I look today at what's going on, which is the resurgence of the slave matrix trying to reestablish itself more fully, you can see the tools it uses. And those tools were given to us by the Elohim, the Anunnaki, through writing and through violent control and like enforcement of will using violence, which hadn't been used previously with the star ancestors in that lost bit of history that we have. What was humanity before that new timeline that was created by the Anunnaki began. And that's why I say the Anunnaki are liars. They're deceptives because their minions still live in the world today and are still there in the old bloodlines, and they're still using the same techniques taught to them. So they are the priesthoods of deception. It's like a priesthood of deception. So what they want you to know, what they want you to believe has stayed within the timeline all this time. There's a reason why all these religious texts have survived. It's because this is one of the control mechanisms that they've settled upon that's doing what they want quite well, which is to have us like obedient, not really doing anything, not claiming our power, waiting for saviors or waiting for, some dogma that we're tied into, worshipping them, calling their names out, giving them praise, all of this stuff. But in the Mauro Biglino translations of the Old Testament, he's clearly saying that it's not about God, and also that Jesus does not pray or talk about Yahweh or the Elohim as his father, his mother is something more internal that he goes to through self. So Jesus, that's a whole nother story that we could get into of my opinions and beliefs on that story. I know it's a loaded topic and there's so many people got so many different opinions on it anyhow. So anyway, I'm not going to dive into that too deeply right now. But my point that I'm trying to make is think about how writing, when it was first brought in, it was completely controlled, and it was controlled by the higher priesthoods linked to serving these new invading, enslaving warlords, the Anunnaki Elohim, and it was controlled to scribes. Not just anyone was allowed to read, and not just anyone was allowed to write. It was controlled. So that means it was controlled for a reason. You control things for a reason because you want to be in charge of what is written. And it's exactly the same as what we see today. They planted the seed, and this is the fruit, right? One thing I really do believe in that, if you want to know the seed, just look at the fruit. It's so obvious when you start looking at the world like that. It's like you don't even need to be psychic sometimes to see things. Actually, it all becomes quite obvious when you realize how everything is repeating in cycles, and that a seed gets planted. And if you haven't broke the cycle of that seed, like trauma, like familial trauma, it just keeps playing out and playing out. So because I know that that happens within humans personally, I know it happens for us collectively on a massive level. So that story the Anunnaki were given was them coming in, trying to memory hole our past connection to the true star ancestors. And it was probably easy for them to do that because they looked like some of the groups from the star ancestors, because there's good reptilians that's a part of the ancient star ancestor collective. So this lot come in, and they're just infected by the vol, by the DMA energies, the Wetiko virus, the darkness, the parasitical energetic that makes you want to suck life out to give it to this vol energy, this darkness. So they are on every level infected as a collective and are serving this vol energetic. So this vol energetic is the source of all the evil that everyone's trying to feed the louche to and serve. Really, it's not really a devil or Satan, because again, those were from the Abrahamic texts and they've all been mistranslated, right? It's always mistranslated. So I do recommend going to listen to Mauro Biglino and Paul Wallace yet again, because they really go into, well, what do these texts really say? And again, remembering that still writing and books and things were always controlled, but still you would have had some of those scribes that low key might have written things and hidden scrolls for later humans to find. So they might have gleaned some more truth. There could be many hidden texts that we are yet to discover, because if I had been a scribe and I'd been keeping my head down just to get along, but in the back of my mind I was like, oh, I know what's going on here, I won't say anything, I'll be smart, but I'm going to leave these secret messages so someone in the future can understand what's going on. And it's just look at the world today, you see it all playing out, and all of our history links back to that group. Now you have to understand, Elohim, Anunnaki is the same group. It's the same group, but the star ancestor history we have, though, they're not all one group. You cannot, people like to also assume that the Athena gods, the Nordic gods, and then the Anunnaki were just all the same people. You know, we always scoop everything into just one bucket, but it's also not necessarily true. A lot of our stories about the star ancestors too have been a bit lost in time. You'll have to go back to the true humans who are not under the vol conditioning, who are the tribal shamanic people, because that's what humanity was before the Anunnaki civilized us and put us into these systems controlled by writing and laws. We were tribal people living shamanic ways and living, you know, more in tune with nature. We weren't just, you know, busy building houses for these, you know, Anunnaki who now need these houses built. Why did they suddenly need the houses built 6,000, 5,000 years ago? If they'd been here 2,500 years, surely they would have built themselves a house by now, right? Surely they would have built a house by then. So that tells me, okay, I'm thinking in my head, okay, so that means that's when they arrived. They've had the war, they've crash landed, they're stuck here. So they think, oh, we're going to slave the humans, we're going to take over and get them to do stuff for us. So we weren't born to be slaves or created to be slaves. They turned us into their slaves and then sold us a story that was the way it was always meant to be, sold it to us through their scribes and probably enforcing it, because you can memory hold stuff. Maybe back then the Sumerians knew better. Maybe they're all like, oh, and they just had to go along with it, or they died. We don't know, right? Look at today, what's happening in places, and then think nothing new under the sun. Nothing is new. It is all repeating cycles. The slavery cycle was set off then, and it's been a repeating cycle. It didn't exist. I will lay money on it. It didn't exist before the arrival of that group, the Anunnaki. They set up that fallen matrix that then took us into patriarchies, enslavement, all the things that people whine about today. And I'm not saying they're wrong, but don't be a victim. Got to be an empowered wizard. But I'm just saying it was started by that group. And we know from looking at what I've looked at, I know they're controlling. They use censorship. They control who could write, who could read. They set up the kings, the priest class. The kings had to have the DNA of the gods. Okay, so that's when that all started. Those lineages were started by them. That's the lineage they began. They tampered maybe with some of the lineage by adding more of their DNA, so they'd be more in with the vol, and then easier to control them as their minions. And then that maybe is the story of the people, Adam and Eve, coming out because there was already humans here, and they got out, and there was, you know, they integrated into the already existing population, remember, and they had to be obedient to God, right? The obedience. When you hear the word obedience, that's Anunnaki. Yeah, creator doesn't talk about obedience to creator. There's all of those things that people argue about, rant on about. Oh, you better be obedient to God or you'll be sorry, and all this stuff. That's all Anunnaki propaganda. It's just like to push people down. You'll be sorry, you better be obedient. So even if no one's watching you, you better be obedient, right? It's the mind control to control your behavior so you don't rise up against your masters that are enslaving you. You now pray to them as a god. So that's some of my thought processes, understanding about how writing was created, when it appeared, what was it used for, were the beings coming in being honest, right? Because if they're trying to make us think they've been here 250,000 years, is that honest? Did they make those gold mines? Were they being honest? Or were they making humans build them houses suddenly and bring them food as if they just were like refugees, migrants arriving, boat people, right? They suddenly need all this stuff. They were very advanced though, and they knew exactly how to scam us. So we've all just been scams. This whole improper matrix we live in is just a whole scam vibe. That's why there's so many scams and criminals within it, because it was the seed that created the fruit. The bad seed can never create the good fruit. Unless you break away from the systems created by that seed, you'll remain in the fruit that it brings. And so I hope that makes things a bit clearer. And also just showing you how sometimes you can just use logic to just really just look at things and have a good think. And always compare them, think about, because you weren't there back then, but you can time travel by remembering that we still live in the same systems with the same stuff going on today as was going on back then. And then it starts to make sense about how people that memory hole, censor and lie about stuff, well, they're just deceptives, and they use any means, any story, any trick to like hook you in, right? So to me, the Anunnaki were hooking us into this, his story, and anchoring us in there, which is why a lot of people don't trust history and they don't trust stuff. And, you know, they have a realization that there's deception here. And obviously then it's hard to just get to, well, what's the truth? So this is why I always say to people, focus on truth. Don't even focus on religious dogma. If you want to get to where you want to get in life and get this world to be a better place, demand truth, focus on truth, because truth is creator source is truth. When you focus on the truth, it takes you to creator, and creator guides you to the truth. But you have to be willing to just completely keep being focused on it and not asking for it and asking over and over again. Is there anything more I need to see here? Is there something I need to realize? And as you keep asking diligently, only focusing on the truth is a frequency. So you're tuning into the frequency, you're going to start to know what it is. And then when it's not that, you'll be like, oh, that doesn't feel like that frequency. Okay, what's this? Oh, that feels like the frequency of truth. Yeah, your body can be a barometer for that truth and get the right and left brain in balance and everything in check. And you'll be an excellent barometer. Because also the barometer, it can get rusty, it can get blocked. You know, you don't come in with a perfect barometer because you've got all those cycles of trauma planted in you, right? No one, well, I can't say no one. I don't like to say things that aren't true. I can't say no one. I can say a lot of people, quite frequently, you are not born just an absolutely perfect, clear channel, ascended master with everything just working perfectly. Usually you've got to just like dig out loads and loads and loads of old dross in there to then clean your barometer and to be able to gauge much more quickly, is this true, is this not? And I'm getting that this is true vibe, that what we see today, it just the same shit that you saw back then. And it's all, it all goes back to that point in Sumeria. that we have our recorded history from. And then any history from before that, you know, like Aboriginal people have like cave paintings and a history going back 65,000 years, they say. And so they will have the record of the star ancestors. They didn't have the Abrahamic programming quite reach them in Australia at that time, the Aboriginal people. So they were quite cut off from it. So it's not that they're backward or behind. It was that they were left in more their natural state, and the same like people in the rainforest who'd been untouched and stuff. That's why you find those people are very different to the modern people that came from the Sumerian energetic that was released via the writing and the scribes and the prophets and the archangels, right? They hijacked the angels even and made people believe in the archangels, who were just the soldiers of the Elohim, and they are not sacred beings. But I also wanted to say that it doesn't matter if you pray to or like ask and talk to Archangel Michael or Archangel Gabriel. It doesn't mean you're talking to very, very negative energies, because those beings are real beings. They're not really going to be making your wishes come true anyway. So if you call on the Ilarians and you use the names that you're used to, they will still come, right? If they are interested in you and they think you deserve the attention from them, because remember that actually they have very, very important jobs, the Ilarians. They're not just here to serve us all day and be our servants and slaves, quite the contrary. But if they take interest in you and what you're asking, if you're talking to them, they really want to help you out in the moment. Even if you're talking to Archangel Michael or Archangel Gabriel, they can still come in. They will still be there. So if you feel like, well, I talk to Archangel Michael and I feel him and he's helped me many times, I'm saying to you, it's not Archangel Michael who's doing that from the Bible. It is an Ilarian, and they're coming to you because they know that you're calling for an angel, and they're just going to come anyway. Whether, you know, if you could call me any name, but if I knew you needed me, I don't care if you call me a name that's not my name. If I feel like you're calling me, I'm still going to come and help you out if I can. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter if you can't pronounce someone's name or not, like the Ilarians. So again, it doesn't matter, like, it doesn't matter. You can let go of the idea of that, all the Elohim stories, without having to let go of, you know, the Ilarians or the angels. They're going to come if you call them angels anyway, and they're going to come if you call them Ilarians or Michael or Gabriel. So it doesn't really matter. It doesn't mean it's going to change your relationship much. It's just, maybe you'll just stop using the names, because they do prefer it if you don't call them those names. They prefer to be called the Ilarians, and you can call them, and they don't mind to be called angels, but they have frequency names that they don't have, like names in language that, you know, that we speak and are aware of. But the Elohim took the letter L because they knew it was in our psyche. See, this is how scammers work. This is getting me back to the topic. Ilarians, you know, the L came from the Ilarians, and it then got put on the end of angel, Michael, and they took the L sound that humanity already had in our collective consciousness and then repackaged it, calling themselves the Elohim. And they used our sounds against us, which that's what hijacking, manipulative, deceptive scammers do. They get to know their target. They build a system that they know is going to hook them in. They're going to use things they're used to, whether it be saying words they recognize or using things that's going to resonate with them. And then they hook you in that way with their scam, right? And that's why I always tell people to go watch Scamfish and all those scam shows, because understanding how scams work, understanding how mind control works and manipulation works, like in psychology, how narcissists work, how, you know, understanding all the different forms of manipulative psychology, behaviors, and systems that can be used for humans is very beneficial for front loading that information into your intuition when you want to understand if something's a scam or not, or can you see anything that looks like a scam, you know, because after a while you start to know it, right? If you're on Facebook, you get smart, you know, oh, it's a beautiful girl in lingerie, and she's like typing me, hi, I just thought I'd say hello because I'm just really interested in you. You know what's coming next. You know it's a scam, and you're probably just going to block and delete. And understanding scams, you can also apply it to our history, like I am. I'm starting to see the scam with the Anunnaki. That's why I'm calling it an Anunnaki deception. And if you'd like to hear more on this topic from me, you can go to my Gnostic TV link that I'm showing down below. You can go and watch the trailer, because I go into this on Gnostic TV, and support me and support the truth getting out. And I will love you and leave you, and see you on the next episode of The Pursuit of Happiness. One love.